All right, so the preseason is over, the regular season is about to start, and we've got some predictions to make. In today's video, we'll look at who's going to make the team, who's going to be sent back to Belleville, and we'll look at 19 predictions for the 2019 season. But before we get into those season predictions, let's first look at the lineup. It's just before 11:30 here on Sunday, so let's find out what the rosters look like. Felt I should show you that timestamp now, just in case the Sens make their lineups before this video gets out, and it doesn't look like I'm cheating. Let's first start with the easiest of the lineup projections to make, the goalies. There's only 2 goalies left in camp, so we know exactly who will be playing for the Senators this season. And no surprise at all, the 2 goalies are Craig Anderson and Anders Nilsson. So let's go ahead and we'll mark them in. Next, let's look at defensemen. And coming into training camp, we knew exactly where we stood on D because Pierre Dorion announced that 5 defensemen were guaranteed roster spots. And those 5, we knew who they were. They were Thomas Chabot, Ron Hainsey, Nikita Zaitsev, Dylan DeMello, and Mark Borowiecki. So let's go ahead and mark them in too. We know Chabot will be playing on the top line, and he'll be playing at least to start the season with Zaitsev. So let's mark that in as our number 1 line. The second pair is where things get a little interesting. By my money, there's 3 guys who could fill those spots. The left side, I have pretty much guaranteed locked in at Ron Hainsey. Now the right spot on this is interesting. There's 2 guys I could see filling this spot, Dylan DeMello or Erik Brannstrom. By all accounts, the right side on the second unit looks like it could be earmarked for Erik Brannstrom this season, as he'll play alongside Ron Hainsey. But I'm not sold on that, and I'm not sure that's the best thing for him. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to put Dylan DeMello there. Is that what I think is going to happen? I really am not sure about that, but this is what I'd like to see happen. Put Brannstrom down in the AHL, let him be the man. He could play almost 30 minutes a night and absolutely dominate for the Belleville Senators. So our top 4 has 4 of the 5 defensemen guaranteed spots for the Sens. The 5th spot, Mark Borowiecki, he plays on the left side, so let's mark him down there. Now, the Sens have 9 defensemen left in training camp. We've got 5 of them marked down. We've already established Erik Brannstrom is going back to the AHL, so that leaves us with 3. Christian Wolanin, Christian Jaros, and Cody Golubev. Wolanin tore his labrum right before the start of training camp, and he's going to miss 4 months, so he won't crack the opening day lineup, which is a shame because I honestly believe, and DJ Smith even said it, that he would have been in the opening night lineup had he not gotten injured. So with Wolanin out of the way, that leaves 2 defensemen for 1 spot, and that 1 spot is going to go to a guy who spent a decent amount of time in Ottawa last year, Christian Jaros. And now that just leaves Golubev left as the only Sens defenseman who I haven't yet put anywhere. I don't expect the Sens to start the season with just 6 defensemen. Golubev is an older player, so I wouldn't be surprised that he's kept as our 7th defenseman. Now, for the forwards. And much like the defensemen, Pierre Dorion was very upfront before the start of training camp and immediately announced that 10 forwards were guaranteed roster spots. I'm sure most of us know who those 10 forwards are, so let's start filling in the lineup where we think most of them will fit, and we'll start with the top line. DJ Smith and the Sens coaching staff have not been afraid to show their hand and show who they expect to be their top line this season, as they played together for a decent chunk of training camp, so we'll go ahead, we'll mark Brady Tkachuk, Colin White, and Connor Brown down as the top line. Now, moving on to the second line. Again, the Sens really haven't done much to hide who they expect to play on the second line, and one of them is one of the guys who's going to make the team. We'll leave him for later, but let's tack in Anthony Duclair and Jean-Gabriel Pageau on that second line. Now, for the third line. Again, I think the Sens have been pretty obvious about who they expect to play on that third line, so let's first start in with the locks. Tyler Ennis on the left, Chris Tierney down the middle. So that's 7 of the 10 forward spots that are filled by guarantee spots. Let's fill out the fourth line with the other 3. Bodker on the left, Anisimov in the middle, and Ryan on the right. So, that's our 10 guaranteed roster spots filled in. That leaves us with space for 3 guys. Let's fill those in now, starting with the second line. Like I mentioned when I filled in the starting bits of the second line, the Sens have made it pretty obvious who they expect to play there, and alongside Duclair and Pageau is Drake Batherson. Now, for the third line spot, Honestly, this might have been the most difficult spot for me to nail down. I couldn't quite find somebody who would fit that spot, but we're going to go with a younger but older one of the Sens prospects, Philip Chlapik. That leaves us with one roster spot, and it would be the guy who rides around as the healthy scratch. Now, I know that I did say yesterday that I expected this guy to be nothing more than depth and to likely spend most of the year in Belleville, but there is some injuries to this Sens squad, and I think he does make the team out of training camp. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to mark down Scott Sabourin as our 13th forward. So, there's 16 guys left in camp. I have 13 marked down on the board. That leaves us with 3 guys. Who is going back to Belleville? He had a chance to impress last night, being the top line center, playing with Tkachuk and Brown, and I'm not sure he did enough to impress the team and to make the Sens out of camp, so back to Belleville goes Logan Brown. And joining Brown on the trip back to Belleville is another highly skilled forward, and one who DJ Smith was very impressed with, saying early in camp that every time he sees him play, he scores a goal. But after suffering a concussion and missing a chunk of camp, I expect Vitaly Abramov to join Brown and go back to Belleville. Having both of those guys back in Belleville will be huge too, as both can play very high in the lineup, get a lot of 5-on-5 time, a lot of power play time, gain a lot of confidence, grow their skills, learn how to play defense, and next year come into the Sens camp ready to win a job. So that leaves us with one forward I haven't mentioned yet, Rudolph's Balzers. And while I expected Balzers to make this team out of camp, he suffered an injury and will be out a month, so we're going to go ahead, we're going to mark him on IR. And joining Balzers on IR is Christian Wolanin. Both Wolanin and Balzers I expect once they get back from IR and get a little conditioning in, will both spend the majority of the season in Ottawa and not in Belleville. So there we have it. The Ottawa Senators lineup to start the 2019-2020 NHL season. Alright, now the rosters are set, it's prediction time. Let's look at 19 predictions for the Ottawa Senators for the 19 season. In no particular order, number 1, Brady Tkachuk will lead the Sens in scoring this coming season. Now, I started off with a very interesting pick. Some people will argue that it was a way too easy of a decision, while others will say there's no chance that will happen. Brady Tkachuk finished with 10 fewer points than Chabot last season, who led the team in scoring after they traded everybody away, and Tkachuk played one more game. Now, this prediction has nothing to do with Chabot. I don't believe he's going to regress. In fact, I think he's going to take a step forward, but I believe Tkachuk will take a huge step forward. And as a forward, he's going to have an advantage that Chabot won't have. Yes, Chabot is going to play way more minutes, and as a result, will have way more opportunities to score. But I believe that top line of White, Brown, and Tkachuk is going to be very good, and I believe Tkachuk is going to take a huge step forward this season. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get at least 65 or 70 points, and if he can hit that mark and then grow on it next year, boy oh boy, that 4th overall pick is just looking better and better. Now, number 2. I just talked about who's going to lead the Sens in scoring. Here's another points-based prediction. Jean-Gabriel Pageau will have a career season. Pageau finished with 43 points just 3 seasons ago, in a season where the Sens were ravaged by injuries. But much like that first line, I expect the second line of Pageau, Batherson, and Duclair to be very good this season, and I expect that to help Pageau go to a career year. Will he hit 50 points? Maybe not, but he'll certainly top 43. Now, for prediction number 3, Chris Tierney will not finish the season as a Senator. Tierney is a restricted free agent at season's end. He's 25 years old, and he plays the center position, which in Ottawa is starting to become very redundant. By season's end, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Sens trying to get Brown and maybe Norris into the lineup. So freeing up a center spot in Tierney could go a long way to helping that, and I wouldn't be surprised to see the Sens try to take advantage of that, especially with Tierney on the last year of his deal. Now, number 4. DJ Smith will not look underqualified this season. Yes, DJ Smith is a first-year pro head coach, But he did a smart thing, surrounding himself with Jack Capuano and Davis Payne, two former NHL head coaches, and they should help with his transition. The players seem to love him, and Smith has had success in the past. So if he can build on that success and learn the game quickly, but not too quickly, I think it'll be good for the Sens, and I don't believe, given his abilities, that he's going to look out of place in the NHL this season. Will there be growing pains? Oh, you better believe it. But I believe by season's end, we're not going to be lamenting the fact that he is the reason we're losing games. Now, for number 5, let's go back to a points-based prediction. Artem Anisimov will have a career worst season. Since joining the league, Anisimov has posted 28 points in a full season and 27 points in 50-plus games. This season, I expect those numbers will be even lower. Anisimov has always kind of been a middle six forward for most of the teams he's played on. But in Ottawa, I wouldn't be surprised that he's played mostly in a fourth line role, doesn't get a lot of opportunities to score, and as a result, posts the lowest amount of points in his entire career. Number 6. We've talked a lot about scoring. Let's talk a little about defending. Number 6. Anders Nilsson will finish the season as the Sens starting goalie, and it won't be because of outstanding play. Craig Anderson is on the final year of his contract, and while I find it unlikely that he gets moved before the end of the season, given the fact that he's over 35 years old, is on the final year of his contract, and makes more money than Nilsson, I wouldn't be surprised that Nilsson plays slightly better, and by season's end, the team's decided that he's their number 1 goalie, especially knowing that he's due back again next season. Number 7. For the first time in these predictions, let's look at the defense. Our number 7 prediction for this coming season, Thomas Chabot will finish in the top 5 in Nora's voting. Like I said off the top when I predicted Brady would lead the team in scoring, I don't think Chabot's going to have a bad year. I just expect Brady to have that good a year. With that in mind, Chabot's going to have such a good year, he finishes in the top 5 of the Norris voting, improving on his 19th place finish from last season. When you look at the Sens this season, I expect Tkachuk and Chabot are going to lead this team, and when voters look at the voting, they're going to realize how big a monster Chabot was this season, and they'll have no choice but to put him in their top 5. Number 8. This one is a little ironic given the news we got just recently, but Eric Brandstrom will play at least 20 games in the NHL this season. This seems like a bit of a cop-out given what we just found out, but I had written these predictions before, and I'm still not convinced that despite making the team out of camp, that he's going to stick with the team. I think he'll be good enough, he'll earn some time, get some time with the big club, but I'm not sure it'll be full-time this year. Number 9. Anthony Duclair will score 20 goals as an Ottawa Senator this season. Duclair joined the Sens midway through last season in the Ryan Dzingel trade, and in 21 games with the club, scored 8 goals and 14 points. While I don't expect he'll put up those kind of numbers again this season, look for him to score somewhere between 20 and 25, probably about 22-ish goals this season, and he'll be one of the top scorers on the Sens as a result. Number 10. Some people might call this one cheating, but I'm going to throw it in anyway. Our number 10 prediction for this season is actually regarding the Belleville Senators, and my prediction is they will be a top 5 team in the AHL this season. Now, for a lot of people, the argument would be, oh, you're really going way out on a limb there. And while fair, given how stacked the Belleville Senators will be this season, if you look at past results for the Belleville and Binghamton Senators, you would be shocked to see them in the top 5. The Sens have missed the playoffs in 5 straight seasons, and going back 8 seasons, the Sens have just 1 playoff win. I'm not talking round, I'm talking games. They've won 1 playoff game in the last 8 years. The Sens did win the 2010-2011 Calder Cup, but since then have done absolutely nothing. That is, until this season, when the Sens finish in the top 5. Number 11. And this one will focus on another San Jose Shark, as number 11 is Dylan DeMello will not finish the season in Ottawa. Much like Chris Tierney, Dylan DeMello is a free agent at the end of the season. But unlike Tierney, DeMello is an unrestricted free agent, meaning at season's end, the Sens lose him for nothing. I can't imagine they're going to do that. They probably will trade him, and they will probably trade him prior to the deadline, knowing that they got to get Christian Wolanin into the lineup, and knowing they need to make that space. Number 12, another 20-goal scorer. Who is it, you ask? Connor Brown will be the second Sens 20 goal scorer this season. Connor Brown has a tremendous amount of offensive upside. He's had offensive success at the NHL, in the AHL, and in the OHL, including scoring 20 goals as a rookie in the NHL. Since then, though, he struggled offensively, but a lot of that can be tied to the fact that he's been pushed further and further down the Leafs lineup. Now, coming to Ottawa, he's going to be given a chance to succeed and has been put on the Sens top line with Cachet and White. I expect those three are going to have a terrific season, and as a result, Brown will score at least 20 goals. Now, number 13. I think I put this one in here because I really want to speak this one into existence. Number 13 is Jean-Gabriel Pageau will finish the season as an Ottawa Senator. Despite being a center, despite being an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, and despite the fact that I expect Pageau is going to have a career year, I do not think the Sens are going to trade him this season. They just recently named him an assistant captain. He's a key piece of this team, and really, although he plays center, and yes, this season it looks like he could get a lot of second line time, that's not really where he fits, and if the Sens need to move him down the lineup, they could easily do that, and it shouldn't hurt his ability to play. Pageau actually is better suited to being a little further down the lineup, as it allows him to play more of that defensive role that he's very good at. But this season he'll play on the second line, he'll have a career year, and that will not get him shipped out of Ottawa. Number 14. Pierre Dorion will make a trade with a team where he gives away the higher draft pick, and it won't make sense. I brought up Chris Tierney, and I brought up Dylan DeMello. I expect both of those guys to get moved this season, and potentially in one of those trades, or maybe another one, Pierre Dorion will give those guys away, probably send a 5th round pick back as well, and get a 6th round pick in return. And everybody's going to be going, why did you give away a player and a pick to get a worse one back? But that's what Dorion seems to do, and he'll do it again before the season's over. So much for that draft capital, am I right? Number 15. The Sens will try everything they can to move Mikhail Bodker. I don't believe the Sens are overly happy with Bodker. I don't believe he really fits into their plans. And knowing that there's going to be young guys coming, especially Rudolph Spalsers when he gets off injured reserve, I wouldn't be surprised to see Bodker the healthy scratch. And as a result, with that money going out, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Sens either try to trade that or maybe even waive him. I'm not sure how they do it, but I would not at all be surprised if Bodker does not finish this season in Ottawa. Number 16. We've talked about the players, we've talked about the coach, we've talked about the general manager, but we haven't yet spoken about the owner. My number 16 is Eugene Melnyk will, for no reason at all, do something to upset the fan base, undoing the goodwill that will be created over the last couple months. And I believe after the signings of White and Chabot and what the Sens are going to do over the next few months will build up some goodwill, and then Melnyk will open his mouth and undo a lot of that. If you know what's good for you, just stay away from the media this season. Number 17. I talked about him earlier, and I've talked about a few other guys who will stick around and others who won't. So let's talk Anthony Duclair and where he'll be at the end of the year. Number 17. Anthony Duclair will be a Sen at the end of the season. I know he only has a 1-year contract, and I know that I predicted him to score 20 goals, meaning he'll be sought after on the trade market, but I don't believe the Sens are going to trade him. He's young, he's a winger, and he fits in with what this team is trying to do. Moving him wouldn't make sense. I believe he's going to have a good year. The Sens are going to like what they get from Duclair. They're going to keep him as a result, and he'll stay a Sen by season's end. Now, we've talked about some of the offensive ability the Sens are going to have, but let's talk about their offensive inability. The Sens will finish the season with the fewest 20-goal scorers of any team in the league, with just 3. Brady Tkachuk will get to 20 goals, as will Duclair and Brown, but that's where it ends. I don't see Colin White getting there. He'll probably get 17. Batherson will probably get somewhere around 15, but that's it. The Sens are going to have a tough time scoring goals, aside from the guys who I believe will score 20 goals, but that's as far as it goes. I'm not sure if Tkachuk will even hit 30 this season. It'll be close, but he might not get there. So, that's 18 projections I've made so far. I said I would be 19, but I have not said anything about how I expect the Sens will do this season. So number 19 is my season prediction for the Sens. So how will the Sens do this season? Well, number 19, the Sens will not make the playoffs. Is anybody surprised by that? No? Well, I wasn't done. While they won't make the playoffs, they will not finish the season in last place. That could be the shock for a lot of people. How is this team not going to finish last? How will this team not finish last, you ask? Well, I believe they will have a better season. With DJ Smith being a first-year head coach, I think that he's going to motivate them. They're going to work hard. They're going to have success. I also believe the young guys won't struggle nearly as much as people think, and I believe some of the veterans will give veteran leadership and guidance to this team that will help them along the way. The goaltending will do well enough, and the Sens won't finish last. So, it's now a little over an hour later, and, well, I was wrong. The Sens have updated their roster, so let's look at that before I go. So, let's first look at the forwards. I nailed it. I perfectly nailed it. The Sens sent down Vitaly Abramov and Logan Brown to the AHL today. Can't say I'm overly surprised by those moves. Abramov missed too much of camp, and Brown just didn't do enough to beat out the centers, and he didn't really fit in as a winger. Besides, now he can go back, he can play number one center in Belleville and absolutely dominate. Get himself better, like I said earlier, and get ready for next season. Besides, there's no guarantee that Brown doesn't go down to the AHL, play well, Tierney gets moved, there's an open center spot, and he finds his way into that spot before the end of the season. Now, for the Blue Liners. I was a little off on this one. I have to say, this was a big stunner for me. I never expected this to happen, but instead of Brandstrom going down, they actually sent down Christian Jarosz instead. I would have liked to have seen them keep Jarosz up this season, and like I said earlier, send Brandstrom down so he can dominate in the AHL, but if the Sens feel like he's good enough to play as a second pair defenseman in the NHL, I guess they can't complain. So let's change that. We'll take Jarosz out, put Brandstrom in, and move DeMello down a spot. Imagine being Dylan DeMello for a minute. You get traded to Ottawa, spend the season on the top line with Thomas Chabot, then work hard over the summer, come back, and now you're a third pairing defenseman. But that's the way the cookie crumbles, and that's the way we'll go into the year. As for the rest of the lineup, I nailed that too. As I said earlier, the goalies were easy because there were only two left, and the Sens did keep Balcers and Wolanin, but both will go on to IR, as both are expected to miss at least a month, with Wolanin missing probably about 3 more months. So, that does it for this video. Comment down below what you think of my predictions. Comment down below what your predictions are this season. How do you think the Sens are going to do this season? Hit like if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you Thursday night after the Sens beat up on the Leafs.